And welcome to Rauta's Indie 5. This time on Indie 5, which means 5 different releases, features 5 releases from Swedish label Nordvis Produktion. And these ones are all older releases, not necessarily indie as such, like, it's a band's first release on all that stuff, but because these have been released years and years ago. I think the latest one of these is as new as 2019, and the rest of are like 2015, 2016, something along those lines. So once again, let's do this in alphabetical order. I could roughly sum up that this is mostly black metal oriented, but there are a couple of exceptions which I will explain along the way. So let's get going, and alphabetical order shall it be. The first one is something that I must read here. It's called Nechochwen, and Heart of Akamon. This is actually a United States-based duo doing kind of a folk metal. They actually call this Appalachian or Appalachia folk metal. And while this definitely has some black metal tunes in it, this is referring to, first of all, by the name, to some original natives of United States, which are later on called Delaware people or Delaware folk, something like that. And in their language, and this actually means to like walking alone. This is, as far as I can remember, the third album by the band. And none of these two guys, I guess, are considered as Native Americans, but whatever, I'm not gonna judge, just stating the fact. And this one actually have these people fighting here against the Western settlers. So the music is definitely a combination of folk metal and black metal, with the focus of being maybe more on the folkier side, even as far as to say this has some neo-folk parts. And this is mostly done by acoustic guitar parts and clean singing, which don't necessarily sound metallic at all. So one could even say this is partially metal, and that then is divided between folk and black metal, and then the other part is kind of like neo-folk music. This makes this very, very nature-oriented and kind of organic in sound. And to be honest, in my opinion, the better parts on this album are actually those folkier tunes, where the acoustic guitars dominate, maybe nice and clean singing and all that stuff. But when the black metal side kind of comes into play, that is more like where raspier vocals take their part and, electric guitars and distorted stuff, come into play. Now, this is not the kind of a European type of folk black metal, if you will. So there's nothing similar with this one and, say, bands like Fintroll. But if you are into Native American thing, or whatever the correct word nowadays is, and you kind of feel that you have to kind of travel to this so-called neo-folk / folk metal / black metal territory, this might be right up your alley. In my opinion, kind of a potential band, but not too good in my opinion. Decent release, but not good. Then the second one here is a band called Panphage, and this is, I don't know how to pronounce this, Drengskapr, something like that. Sorry for my poor attempt to pronounce it. This is a band that doesn't do much music anymore. I have a feeling that this is nowadays disbanded. One of those Swedish kind of a nature-related black metal projects, or kind of a black folk, if you will, which is then again something that Nordvis has been doing with other projects as well. Now, actually, one of these guys at least took part in a band called Lundom, which was then again more like a folk rock or kind of a folkish way to do rock music, in case that makes a sense. And then again, there is also black metal kind of a background, which then again, kind of overlaps with this music. Now, basically, this is something that people in the black metal scene, especially liking some folk metal stuff, or, well, stuff that isn't necessarily kind of a satanic and dark and sinister and evil sounding black metal, could like. But in my opinion, this is very much like work in progress. Like, for example, the production is somewhat kind of dusty and moldy, like that is not strong and powerful or evil and, ripping, but it's not bad. But there's something like it's missing those killer parts and riffs. So it's kind of like much like that Nechochwen, kind of a decent to listen to, but it's lacking the kind of a magical moments, the whatever you call it, hit songs or important chorus parts or stuff like that. So much like a potential gem, which never, it seems, turned into a gem and then disbanded. But once again, everybody must figure out that for themselves. Then we have a rather interesting project coming from Germany. This is a solo one called Prag 83, an album called Metamorphoses. Now, what I read about this project is that this is inspired by the writer and books of Franz Kafka. So not your typical project in the sense of paying homage to the writer and his works. And this is mostly, but not totally, instrumental music. Kind of a tapping once again to the more, say, organic or an acoustic music rather than, you know, metallic one. One can even say this is a little bit of a, I don't know if the right word is, offshoot coming from the label, because it's definitely something different. You know, it's not metal at all, and that's why you don't, for example, find this on Metal Archives. It's more like a neo-folkish, but not exactly that kind of a project, where there's a little bit of singing, but it's kind of dominated by instrumental tracks. But it's actually nice in atmosphere, something that, you know, one could imagine putting on the background to play while you read it, for instance, if that makes sense. I know that a lot of people who do that, then again, lots of people who don't like to listen to anything while they read. But in case there is a soundtrack to reading some of the more, I don't know, not necessarily your easiest kind of fiction or whatever, this could be the thing. I find this rather interesting, kind of a soothing music, which is nicely done, but because it's not the kind of a music that aims for, you know, those killer parts or catchy riffs or chorus parts to sing along, it could be a little hard to get into. But people who like their ways with neo-folk, but not necessarily limited to that, or who are into, say, music like Nick Cave and this, like, you know, kind of going into different places than mainstream rock music, operating in the around occult or folkier stuff and stuff like that, maybe if I find this interesting. I don't know if my words make that much of a sense, especially without listening to the music, but give it a go in case you find the description or attempt to describe it somewhat interesting and you might actually like it. Then I'm kind of happy to conclude this whole review with the best albums of this pile. These are two more releases from Nordvis, and this is Saiva, which is then again actually the project of the label owner himself. And this is an interesting release because it's kind of a folk metal, and now it seems that the camera is not keeping up with the you know, lighting and all, because this is all white and you barely see that black text right there. But whatever it is, Finnmarkens folk, which means the people of Finnmark, roughly give or take, which is something like the northern parts of Sweden. Now, this is also kind of an interesting combination of styles, because later on Saiva turned more into folkier tunes, but this is actually where the different styles kind of combine. Now, this was originally released only as 2-song EP a few years ago, and then later on this was complemented with a couple of more tracks, and resulting in some 30 minutes overall music. And that is where the black metallic side, especially with the first track, kind of a handshake with the folkier stuff, and that's where the later songs come into play, more dominating. And one could even say this is kind of a Swedish version of Isengard in a way. Different, but kind of a similar, you know, because both of these band members, you know, Fenris from Dogthrone obviously, playing black metal, but having Isengard for his like more folkier tunes. That's exactly what's going Saiva, because the main member, the label owner, is, you know, man from Armageddon, a Swedish black metal project, and where that is raw and sinister and kind of a misanthropic music, this is very much like nodding or paying homage to the nature surrounding northern parts of Sweden, or that's at least the idea with what I'm getting from this album. It features some really nice tunes, and the overall feeling is like as if you're listening to some nature metal soundtrack in a way. soothing experience and beautiful music by Saiva, what they have actually done before. I mean, after that this is one of the, I think the first release actually. Anyway, nice release. It's on 30 minutes of an EP, so in case you don't have the original one, this CD with more tracks is your way to go. The last but not least is Skogen, a Swedish black metal band. Skogen meaning forest, and this is döden. If I'm not mistaken, this is their third album. Or fourth. Now I'm not trusting my memory anymore, because you know, sometimes when you're talking about multiple albums in one video, you kind of get to mix things with each other. Anyway, this comes with a nice digipack, and it features more than 60 minutes of melodic black metal. What makes this even more interesting is that this is one of the albums that actually combines elements from various bands. Some parts are more like early Satyricon, like two first albums with the kind of atmospheric parts, keyboards, and kind of a more like mid-tempo black metal. Then again, there is a riff that reminds me some mid-era Marduk. There are parts that kind of remind me of Panphage, maybe even Vindir. So this is like a cross-cutting experience of Norwegian and Swedish black metal. Also, there is a part which is definitely having a strong Burzum vibe, once again with synthesizer. This is not one of those albums that go fast and furious throughout the album, but more like mid-tempo with some faster tempo parts included. And there are clean singing, there are, you know, raspy vocals, there are, you know, lots of melodies, lots of keyboards used. But most important, this is an album with, you know, those very nice melodic parts. Kind of a diverse, which actually helps you to go through these 60 minutes plus. And actually, I want to give this album a special compliment. This 4-track right here has, in my opinion, what could be described as the best black metal melody of all times. Very sad and melancholic, but so goddamn catchy. It's like the perfect thing. So, yeah, this has some really great stuff included, and then lots of just strong but nothing spectacular also. Overall, resulting a good album, which is definitely a good thing to have. This is definitely going to my personal collection of CDs with that Saiva one. So, interesting batch. They're all quite fitting to Nordvis style. In case you haven't ever explored their site or the bands on the label roster, you will find that most bands are somewhat related to nature or a certain kind of Nordic mindset, if you will. Whether it's about landscape, whether it's about atmosphere, or wilderness surrounding us and all that stuff. Definitely an interesting label. One of my favorites from the underground scene, because it's just not your typical like super commercial label, but more, you know, having its own style, much like Northern Heritage is having its style in Finland, but these two are very different in the ways that what kind of bands they have, but they have one thing in common, at least one thing in common, and that is they know their style, and they're not gonna include just some random bands, you know, like whether the music is good or not. So big hails to Nordvis for sending me this along the way, with some newer ones back in the days. These have been quite a while in my review pile, but once again, these were already old when they arrived, so that's my excuse to not make hurry with them. Now, if I had to pick a winner from this pile, it would be quite hard, because I like Saiva and Skogen quite a lot. You know, it's hard to pick winner here, but maybe Skogen, because it has this really killer melody. But overall, quite interesting pile, so go check them out. You will find links provided in the description box below. So 5 different releases with 5 different takes on folkier and nature themed tunes. Now go check out some of the music, and I hope you like it, and in case you do, why don't you check out if some of them are available through Nordvis' own store. Thanks for your time, take care, and see you soon with more Rauta stuff coming your way. Bye bye.